Hey, this is Notser, and this is a look at the early tiers of the American battleship line. At Tier 3, we've got the South Carolina. 8 305mm guns, 18 knots. Yes, that's not a mistype. The American battleship line, early to mid-tier, is notorious for being the slowest in the game. Armor-wise, we've got 16mm on the bow and the stern, and that's not enough to stop equal-tier battleships that you might face. So, overmatch the bow and the stern, guys. You can get into the Citadel. As far as the ship is concerned, it's really just a stepping stone. You really just want to get past it. My build is basically the same build I would do on every American. Go AA, basic and advanced, concealment, expert marksman. The turrets do need to traverse a little bit faster than they actually do right now in the game. And vigilance. It's a very solid American battleship build. There is really no module that you can equip on it to change the performance. Main armament and lower fire chance is always appreciated. But yeah, the South Carolina, it's nothing special. I really don't see anything that stands out. You just need to be careful. You move slow. So this is sort of an American issue. Because the American battleships move so slow at early to mid tiers, you really should consider picking up the speed flag and using it all the time on them. At Tier 4, we've got the Wyoming. Now, the Wyoming is starting to look like an American battleship. It's got that bulky appearance, and it's got 12 305mm guns. Pretty fair AA protection. All right speed for an American, 20.5. The armor is still vulnerable to equal tier battleships. They can easily overmatch it, and they will all the time. So the Wyoming has more guns, but it also has a couple issues mid-ship. The number 3 and number 4 gun sometimes get caught on the structure of the ship, and you cannot engage unless you're perfectly broadside with those particular guns. In my opinion, it's better to not go perfectly broadside against a target that could punish. Obviously, a destroyer can't really punish a broadside unless, of course, he gets torpedoes out, but I'm trying to kill him as fast as possible so he can't get those torpedoes out. Because of your speed, and I really need to reiterate this, because the American battleships are so slow, you cannot overextend at all. You need to have support. If you don't have support, well, guess what? You're probably going to die. You can't get out of the area fast enough. Having said that, your AA protection on average is a little bit higher than the Japanese or even the Germans, because the Germans are mostly, at this point, based on World War I, and let's face it, there were no aircraft in World War I. And certainly, it's ridiculous to think that an aircraft would attack a ship. But yeah, the Americans, they kind of excel at this point with their AA protection. It's only going to get better. There are some premiums that are even better than this, but the Wyoming works out. At Tier 4, again, we have the premium Arkansas beta. This was a reward for participating in closed beta, and it's basically sort of an unupgraded Wyoming. It's got 12 305mm guns, a speed of 20.5 knots, 19mm of bow and stern armor. But you might notice something's missing. It has absolutely zero AA protection. Now, giving up AA protection, especially right now in the current meta, is suicidal, Notser. Yeah, it is. But what do you get for it? Well, a tier 9 and 10 equivalent module loadout. You might be tricked into believing that, oh, this is actually a late tier battleship, when in fact it is a tier 4, so you kind of have to upgrade it to be relevant, and you can definitely tell what the weak point of the ship is. Attack it, aircraft carriers, attack it. Show no mercy, exactly like the aircraft carriers on the enemy team. I suspect they were aware of me. I believe there was enough time for them to get in the queue and say, oh, well, I've seen this ship before. It would be hilarious if I would attack it, and yeah, you just extremely vulnerable to aircraft. Most of you don't have this. Even talking about this, I'm just trying to inform you about what is the ship's main goal. It has to rely on range and not being the focus of a aircraft carrier. If you happen to have one on your team and you are an aircraft carrier, please go and help them. They need your help because they will be focused down. I guarantee players who try and play this ship will be like, well, the jig is up. Everyone knows that we're weak to aircraft, and that's a good thing. More informed community. At Tier 5, we've got the New York. Now, I have a New York class pretty close to me. In the Texas, we'll get to that, but it has 10 356mm guns. Okay, AA protection, honestly not very special. 21 knots as the top speed. The bow armor is, again, the 19mm. So, again, extremely vulnerable to bow-on gameplay. Be very careful when you point that nose at something. However, the New York is starting to really have the trait of the American battleship, which, for better or for worse, is difficult to use number 3 gun, low speed, AA protection. And the reason, honestly, it's AA protection, because you can't actually use your aiming module. The American battleships don't have access to that particular module. Only at Tier 9 and 10 do you get access to an aiming module, and that's in the second of the 2 primary DPS slots. So you've got to decide, do I extend the range of the guns? Which thankfully they extended it for us about 3 or 4 patches ago. So it goes from being a mandatory take to perhaps you take extended gun range module. I, especially right now, with the current meta where there is an overabundance of aircraft carriers at early tiers, obviously not in this game, I take the AA gun range. I don't really want to extend the time it takes to reload the guns for faster gun rotation. I think that sucks, and I don't really need the gun range. So the next best thing is AA protection. It's up to you. I wish I could get accuracy, but that is one thing about the Americans that is very odd indeed. Will it continue in another line? I have no idea. At Tier 5 again, we have the Texas. It's a premium. Now, this ship is extremely impressive in its AA protection. It's got 10 356mm guns, 20.5 knot speed. Again, the same sort of armor layout. It is a New York class, so 19mm on the front and the stern. Now, some might argue that this is just straight up better, and I'm going to argue that for a couple of reasons. One, the number 3 gun has a better arc, a better firing arc, so you don't have to show quite as much broadside. Number 2, the AA protection that this particular ship offers compared to other battleships at these tiers is extremely high when you compare them, and that is awesome. With the current meta, that there is an overabundance of aircraft carriers, it should be able to protect itself rather well, and it'll allow you to use your guns much more effectively than the New York. Now, some people might say, oh, but the New York has slightly better stats in this regard, better concealment, better turrets. I don't know what. I would say, you don't really feel it. The DPS of the AA is what you feel. I extend the range. They are shallow, but again, you can't use an accuracy module. You just can't. So you're not really giving up all that much. It's not a tough choice for the Americans because I just can't use it. So yeah, the Texas. Now you might see I'm using a different camo than I introduced. This is sort of an American flag camo. I think it's pretty funny. It's pretty enjoyable. I like it, but you can use a sort of stock camo. At Tier 6, we've got the New Mexico. It has 12 356mm guns, and you're starting to see the small caliber. Other ships at this tier have 380. That's all I'm saying. Even 410. AA protection, all right, not as good as the Texas. 21 knot speed. It's still really slow, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. Armor protection is better though. It went up to 25mm, which means 357 has to be the gun caliber in order to overmatch it. So that means that a New Mexico cannot overmatch its own bow and stern armor. Yes, that's what it means. However, the 380s, the 410s, they have no problem overmatching that, and you should try and do just that if you're presented with a New Mexico in your larger caliber guns. But the New Mexico, a lot of people enjoy the playstyle. The guns are vastly superior in their positioning compared to the New York class, the Wyoming class, the Texas class even. So you should be able to use all of them all the time. It's AA protection. It feels okay. It's a step down from the Texas, but pretty much everything is a step down from the Texas. I get rudder shift. I prefer that. Again, the same sort of build, basic and advanced, vigilance, expert marksman. You're just going to have a difficult time when fighting against other tier 6s who have 380, 410. They're basically designed to counter you, and I can't give you any solution. There's more and more of them every day. And lastly, we've got the premium tier 6 Arizona. 12 356mm guns. A protection is okay, rather weak compared to the New Mexico, and definitely terrible compared to the Texas, for instance. Its armor layout is very similar to the New Mexico. Again, 25mm, 357 or above in order to overmatch it. Slow, it's an American trait. You just have to understand you cannot dictate the pace of the match. You must allow it to come to you. You can't overextend. You have to try and be supportive of your team. You're starting to run into ships, and battleships especially, that have 10 knots on you. 10 knots! So be very careful how you play out the match. Does that mean you can't participate as well as you would like? Well, no, but you just have to understand you have very obvious weaknesses, especially the Arizona. Terrible AA protection at its tier, terrible speed, gun caliber is not impressive at all, but accuracy feels pretty good. It's pretty maneuverable, it's pretty short, so avoiding torpedoes should be a little bit easier than those longer Japanese battleships. And overall, this has been the American battleship line. Short, pudgy, slow ships with reasonable gun caliber, nothing spectacular, nothing undervalued, and AA protection that is honestly pretty impressive for its tier. Next up, we're going to look at the late tier American battleships tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you next time.